And we are live. And this is a meeting of the Downtown Commission Parking and Transportation Working Group. There's no chair currently, but Councilwoman Turner has offered to go over some of the guidelines for live streaming public meetings, since she is an expert on this at this point. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and maybe we could do a brief introduction. I'll introduce myself, and then maybe you could each, and I'll give some directions. So I'm Sage Turner, Asheville City Council and liaison to the Downtown Commission and previous chair of this Parking and Transportation Committee. Thank you for being here today, and to those of you listening in or following up online, we recorded. We appreciate it. We are going to be discussing today, not voting on any particular items, but what comes of this discussion will be a recommendation to council. For those of you participating virtually today, if you could stay on mute as much as possible unless you need to speak, and that will help reduce background noise. There is a raise your hand option, and if you would like to get in the queue, simply push that button and we'll keep an eye on it and call on you. If we move into a presentation mode, we will not be able to see the raised hand, so you will have to speak up and briefly interrupt to be heard. I think that is it, and we can get started. So maybe Ruth, I think if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then it looks like Stephen Lee is on, a couple of the committee members, and then we could go to city staff. Thanks everyone for being here.
I'm Ruth Summers. I represent Grove Arcade Public Market Foundation in downtown, and I'm also on the Downtown Commission.
I'm Stephen Lee Johnson. I live and work downtown, and I'm on the Downtown Commission.
Looks like we're on to staff. Maybe Garrett, and then Ken.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Garrett Mail. I'm the Parking Services Division Manager with the City of Asheville Transportation Department.
And I'm Ken Putnam. I'm the Director of the Transportation Department.
I'm Dana Frankel. I'm the staff liaison for the Downtown Commission.
And David Hazard is on line 2.
Oh, sorry, Dave Hazard, urban designer with the city. How we all doing?
All right, so I think that was everybody introduced. I know we have, I think I saw Karen Ramshaw join us. If Karen, you wanted to say hello, now would be the time.
Hi, I'm Karen Ramshaw. I work with public interest projects and M2ABL in downtown.
Awesome. Okay, I think we're going to hand it back to staff and kick off unless I miss somebody.
Megan Rogers, did you say hello?
Hi, I didn't. I'm sorry, I was a little bit late. Megan Rogers, Asheville Downtown Association, and also on Downtown Commission.
Thank you. And I'll just help kick off the discussion briefly. We all met just over a month ago and went over various items that relate to downtown parking and transportation. We wanted to follow up with you all on one particular item, which is the possibility of changing some rates for downtown parking. You all did offer some helpful informal feedback last time. We wanted to come back with some more information and offer the opportunity for you to provide some more feedback. A note that staff will go to City Council's Finance and Human Resources Committee on the 20th of April with a proposal. So thanks for getting together today to hear these updates and to offer any informal feedback that you have. And with that, I will hand it over to Garrett Mail, our Parking Services Manager.
Thanks, Dana. So the first thing on the agenda is just to give you an update on our new parking equipment, and that need is really driving the other elements of the agenda. It's something that we've spoken to various groups, including previous iterations of this one, I think several times before. But for those that may not know, we operate 4 public parking garages downtown. Each of them are gated, so they have access control technology in each one. That equipment is very outdated and very much in need of replacement. The general expected lifespan for equipment of that nature is 5 years, 7 if you're lucky. We are exceedingly lucky in that the majority of our equipment is approaching 10, 15 years, or in a few cases, even longer than that. We are at the point where that equipment is failing on a daily basis. When that happens, it creates very not great customer service issues for us, very strange customer experiences. So those are certainly things that we don't want to be our norm. So we really are at a place where we do need to replace that equipment. Having said that, we shifted into looking at, are there any enhancements to the equipment that we can make that are going to improve customer service? Through our research, we found that the majority of national manufacturers of this type of equipment have shifted away from being able to accept physical hard coins. Most of them are only accepting paper cash at this point. Because of that, and there's a couple of reasons that we would recommend moving in that direction from a staff perspective. The first is if there's no coin handling in equipment, that is fewer moving parts in the equipment, which translates into less breakdowns, faster transaction times, and overall, we think a better customer experience at the payment device. With some time studies that we have done for our own operations, and I'm sure many of you have used our garages and are familiar with them, some of them have unique challenges in terms of pedestrian access and vehicular access. We have found that by eliminating or potentially eliminating the use of coins in our facilities, that will speed up transaction times for us by 75%. So think about what that might mean in terms of when you all may have parked in the garages, and if they're busy or there's traffic lines, we definitely have staff available to help with that, but we know there's a tremendous aspect of that experience that is a result of how our equipment functions. So that's a really big plus for us. Knowing that there's not a lot of manufacturer support out there for coin handling equipment required us to shift our focus to say, since our rates do currently require the use of coins for all transactions other than the first hour, how can we look at a rate change to allow us to get to a point where we're able to utilize that equipment, since that's really what's on the market for us to be able to purchase. Knowing that for the reasons I mentioned, it should also translate into better customer experience and better maintenance experience for our customers and for our staff. Let me pause there and just ask if anybody has any questions about our equipment journey.
Okay, one thing, I know that one of the big issues that clog up the garages, particularly after events, or it's not just coins, it's also, you know, just each transaction at the gate. Did you look at systems that allowed you to pay in various places in the garage so that the exiting was, you know, just wave your, you know, your stamped card, you know, the little card or token or whatever it was they gave you at the exit, because that way you could still, you know, I mean, the coin issue wouldn't be, you know, you could solve some of that in the little, you know, individual stations, but it would also really, really help, because I think every single one of us who've used a garage after an event have spent 30 minutes or more in that line.
Yes. So the equipment we are proposing will have pay in lane options. Those are what we're most familiar with now, where you're paying from your vehicle. They will also include what we're calling walk-up pay stations, which will be located throughout the garage, and in some cases, for example, on the Wall Street garage, we're proposing having one near the courtyard outside of our offices here on Wall Street. So we do plan to have that option available. We would like to see the majority of customers eventually transition to that type of payment environment, because to your exact point, Karen, that would take the time factor out of paying in the lane completely out of the equation. That's, of course, going to be a very different experience, and so it'll probably take us a while to get there. But that is going to be an option we will propose going forward. The other option we will have the ability to take advantage of will be prepayments, and that can be done via any mobile connected device. So, for example, you may be able to, if you chose, especially if you knew you may be in the garage for 3 hours, to prepay for 3 hours. You get a unique barcode that you scan on your phone to come in, and you scan that same barcode to come out. The system will calculate whether you stayed for 3 hours, whether you stayed for less and are entitled to a refund, or if you stayed for more and handle it for each individual transaction. So yes, that is something we wanted to look at and it goes, again, I think back to enhancing the experience we have now, knowing that we can do different things that should be better. So if there are no other questions, I think that leads us into, because we've established that coin is a real challenge with the new equipment, what does that look like for us in terms of rates? We are proposing, I'm not going to call it a rate increase, but a rate change. The other thing that we've looked at through this process, and again, you all may be familiar with this, you essentially have, Karen, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, I just had one more question. When you were doing your research, are any of these companies not taking cash at all?
There are a few that actually is, a lot of them have mentioned to us in our research that that is what a lot of folks will see as the future of the parking industry, where it will not be cash driven, whether that might be credit, debit cards, validations, preloaded cards. So of course our equipment will have the capability to do all of those things, but we as a city did not want to propose a solution that would make paying with cash any more difficult than it may be today.
Right. Yeah, I was just wondering if there was an option. I mean, I'm really concerned about $2 an hour for downtown. So I was just wondering if there was a way that people could use cash in a machine, and then that would take away the problem of the coins at the at the exit. But that's, I don't know how many different permutations of possibilities you guys, looked at for that.
That technology does exist. We went into this effort not wanting someone to have a different experience based on where they chose to pay, whether that's if they chose to prepay, if they chose to pay at a walk-up kiosk, or if they chose to pay in the lane, either at a pay station or with one of our booth attendants. So we wanted that experience to be as consistent as possible. So in terms of what that looks like for us for rates, and again, our focus wasn't really on the revenue side of this. It was just understanding what are the benefits of this coinless technology and how can we best implement that. What we're looking at is an hourly rate structure, which is what about 60% of our customers do. The other 40% are our monthly customers. And the way that's currently handled is you pay us a specific amount per month that affords the user of that permit 24/7 access to the garage. We found, particularly in the last year, that the idea of a one-size-fits-all, one-time-fits-all monthly parking approach isn't meeting the needs of a lot of our customers. So another thing that we're proposing is creating more options than simply pay by the hour, pay by the month, because those are really the only two options you have in the garages right now. So we're looking at daytime rates, nighttime rates, and what we're calling a sunset rate, which would specifically be a permit that would be available from 4 p.m. until 7 a.m., 7 days a week. It would also be inclusive of Saturdays and Sundays. We really wanted to try and look at the idea of understanding, or better understanding, when and where and why do our customers choose to park in the way that they do, and how can we change how we offer parking to better meet those needs. So in terms of what that will look like, we are recommending that the hourly rate structure in all 4 garages change from $1 for the first hour, $2 for each additional hour, with a daily maximum of $20. We're proposing no changes right now to the 24/7 monthly parking options available in each garage. We're proposing that the 12-hour rates will vary. The low range would be $80 a month, up to $110 a month for the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. permit. And we're proposing that sunset rate that I mentioned, the evening and weekend rate, of being $65 ranging to $90 depending on the garage. Those prices are really based on our observed demand. We also know that we haven't changed rates in a couple of years. I think the last time we did is 2018, if I remember correctly. And so we wanted to put a structure of options in place so that we continually can look at those and be a little bit more responsive to what we see demand for parking being. The other thing that we're proposing, and it really speaks to options, because we completely understand the hesitation that comes with particularly an hourly rate change, and we also know that a good number of our customers do take advantage of those hourly rates. But we're also looking at trying to expand the monthly parking options outside of our garages. So what that looks like is there are several parking lots that we operate downtown, as well as several permitted on-street parking areas. We're proposing to convert a few of the parking lots that are currently park by the hour to monthly parking. We're also proposing to adjust some of the rates for those lot and street monthly parking areas. In some cases, we're proposing rate decreases. And we're also proposing to create 3 new additional on-street permit zones, again, with the idea being that we currently have those 2 very formulaic options in the garage, yet we know we want to do more to provide more options to folks, so that even if the rate change for the hourly rate does go into effect, yes, that's going to impact whoever chooses to pay it. We understand that. But there's the other element of trying to better understand what those customer needs are. So if there are other options that we can take care of for folks, not in an hourly context, we're wanting to fully explore that and make sure that the options are out there, because they're currently not there today, and also that it's something that's really tailor-made to the needs of the community as much as we can. Sorry.
I was going to offer to take over as facilitator, but you go ahead, Garrett.
No, I was just going to say, I think I ended up hitting a couple of our, well, really the 3 bullet points that we wanted to discuss about new options, changes in rates, and equipment. I can certainly pause there and we can do discussion, questions. I'm also happy to speak to, sorry, Ruth, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what lots are the rates going to increase on?
Let me take a look at my sheet. The only one that we're showing an increase of right now is, it's actually not any of the parking lots. We are proposing a change to some of the on-street parking permit areas. The 2 that we're recommending are Grove Street and North French Broad Street. We're proposing that based on observed demand, in that right now for some of those locations, if customers call us saying they want to park in those areas, we don't have any permits to sell.
It begs the question to me, because I'm very familiar with lot 17, and I'm curious to know whether the the Indigo is still renting 25 spaces there. And if so, I'm wondering why that lot 17, the prices are not increasing.
To answer the first part of your question, they are still a monthly customer. We are actually seeing that there is some availability that we're working through on a waiting list for that lot right now. Let me pause also and say that most of our facilities for, again, that sort of 24/7 monthly parking do have wait lists based on demand. We have seen that quite a few of those wait lists have dropped off. You know, the customers that are on those lists are no longer interested in parking for a variety of reasons. And we've also found, curiously, not as much in the parking lots, but in the garages in particular, a pretty significant reduction in the amount of existing customers for monthly parking, to the point that we now have over 100 monthly parking spaces available in the Harris Cherokee Center garage, and about 50 the last time I looked in the Biltmore Avenue garage. To answer your question about why we're not proposing any rate changes there, that lot, and if you all are not familiar, that is a lot that we operate next to the AT&T building on O. Henry Avenue. 10 of the spaces in that lot are currently hourly parking that are really underutilized. So we're also proposing to convert those to permit parking, which should increase the supply of permit parking in that particular location.
So I'm wondering, have you advertised those 10 spaces that are available to merchants in the Grove Arcade?
We haven't done any specific targeted marketing to specific groups, but we do maintain a listing of what's available or what's waitlisted on our divisional website.
I think in the queue we had Stephen Lee, then Karen, then Megan.
Thanks. This is Stephen Lee. I just wanted to mention, I think that the idea of the options for people that have monthly spaces in the decks is really good. Obviously, downtown residents have different needs than downtown workers, and it definitely seems like a chance for potentially some increased revenue because you may have more spaces to sell on like a busy weekend event when you don't have workers downtown not having access to those spaces. And it seems like with new systems, new software, that's something that would be a really great idea. So I'd really like to support that 100%. Thanks.
You know, I think one thing that would be helpful for us is if we could see some sort of map that shows what we have now, what the proposed changes, what that, you know, what difference that makes. And, you know, are we losing hourly spaces, or are we, you know, are we gaining more monthly, you know, just because I think that people are coming from different places, and whether you're trying to make sure there are more monthly for staff and residents or more hourly for customers is just a balance that, you know, I know you guys try to work out, and so do the people in the community. So I think that would be helpful, just to have a more comprehensive understanding of what's going on. I had two other questions. One is actually not about the downtown. I mean, we have talked for a decade at least about extending parking to Biltmore Village, to Biltmore Park. I mean, it just does feel every time we have a conversation about laying the lash to the CBD, we continue to disregard the fact that there are other places in this community that could also be contributing to parking and transportation and all of these other costs. And when you consider that downtown is home to the vast majority, you know, the biggest concentration of our small local businesses, it does feel, especially after a year of pandemic when people are hanging on by their fingernails, that this is just a really, really tone deaf, effort, on the part of the city. And while I appreciate all the work, and I know that in the bigger, longer term picture that this would probably be okay, this is a really, I'm exhausted, and I can't imagine, I talk to people who are still crying on a weekly basis about what's going on. One thing that I also have a concern about is just more barriers to locals coming to downtown. And, can you have more hours free? Or, a dollar, for the first 2 or 3 hours, so that people could come and have lunch, come and have dinner, come and go to a movie, come and shop a little bit after lunch or whatever, so that they, I know I've been on this soapbox forever, but I just feel like we have all these people in Greater Asheville that feel like downtown is for tourists, and then the city does things that make it even harder for people to participate. And I don't think that's your intention, but I think that's the reality. And that's something I'm just, really concerned about.
Megan?
Yep. So Karen probably made my point, the same point I was going to make. Parking is always the top concern from downtown businesses, and I just think that there's going to be it's going to elicit a negative response to see a rate increase. And Karen's right that on the heels of a pandemic, it feels even more that we're making parking even harder instead of easier. And I also wanted to agree with Stephen Lee's point, though. I think the monthly parking options are interesting. I like that idea to give people some options there. So I would be supportive of that. And then lastly, just correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was the reason the on-street parking rate was higher than the garage was in the hopes of getting people who were staying longer into the garage and off the street by, making that parking a little bit more affordable in the garage. So I'm wondering if this might have the opposite effect, where people will stay in on-street parking, which businesses need to turn over because it's cheaper than being in the garage now. Thanks.
So that was quite a few questions, and I will do my best to get each one, but I'll probably have to pause at the end to make sure we got them. So let me actually start with the on-street part, because we did consider that. So that is definitely possible. And we know at a very high level that whatever these changes looks like, because we're talking about money that people would need to provide to the city for a service, that in and of itself is probably going to affect some behavior change and some choice change. We don't really know what that will look like. We just know that it's a thing we'll need to be aware of and mindful of. On the street spaces, what we typically will see is, yes, there are some folks that make that decision to say, I need to park for a longer period of time, so it makes sense for my wallet, or it makes sense for my convenience to go park in a garage rather than on the street. There are, I would say, a significant, that's just my gut, I'm not referring to a specific number, of folks who will do the opposite and, for example, may choose to stay at a meter, may choose to pay it, may choose not to pay it, and will effectively try and determine if they can remain in that metered space without receiving a citation, which is really a function of how often are we able, through our enforcement staffing, to check each meter in a given area or throughout the entire downtown in a given day. So that is a strategy that we hear a lot of folks using, which really doesn't help things from the business end, because the goal for us is to certainly generate enough revenue to cover our expenses, whether we're talking about on-street parking or off-street parking, because we are an enterprise fund and don't receive any general funds to operate parking. So that is a focus, but it's not our primary focus. The primary focus for us, for meters, is to ensure that they turn over quickly, so that for folks who need short-term options that are convenient to businesses or whatever they may be doing, that street space is available. And I've had lots of conversations with several of you and many, many people in the community that on a lot of busy, nice days, we currently don't even see that availability. You may go on a Core Street downtown, and all of the metered parking spaces are full. So one of the ways that we can look at how do we increase that turnover is absolutely what is that rate in comparison to other options. One thing that we're aware of, though, is every time we change rates, that is an impact that everyone who will choose to pay that feels. The other option that we have, which we're looking at, and I don't know that we're at a point where we're ready to make a firm recommendation, is to enforce a time limit on the meter, whether or not it's paid. So currently, if someone parks for 2 hours and pays for the whole 2 hours, they're okay, they don't receive a citation from us. The same thing is generally true if someone parks at a meter for 6 hours. But if someone parks at a meter for 6 hours and our primary goal is to have that be short-term convenient parking, then perhaps we could do a little bit better to meet our goal. The other reason that I personally like that option is if someone does receive a ticket for staying longer than a posted time limit, that's a penalty or a citation that only they pay based on a specific circumstance, rather than a rate change affecting everyone who parks at a meter. Does that make sense? So the other thing that we looked at, to some of the points that were made, is why are we proposing $2? Why isn't it just $1 every hour? Because we are an enterprise fund, there is a certain amount of revenue that we need to make in order to pay operating expenses and to look at how we do some of the expansions that were mentioned. What we found is if the balance of those hours were $1 an hour, we're likely to lose revenue anywhere between $200,000 to about $700,000 or $800,000 a year. Those numbers are a little bit more flexible than I'd like, just because we've seen some pretty drastic swings in our revenue because of COVID. But that's the main reason why we settled on the $2, is we know there's a certain amount of money that we need to break even on operating expenses and also plan for those expansions and being able to have essentially cash on hand to make those investments in areas outside of downtown, which for us in a very practical sense means some sort of technology, whether that's a meter, whether that's an enforcement vehicle, but then also the staff to manage that technology and to manage the customer experience. The challenge becomes, since we don't necessarily have massive cash reserves on hand, especially as we've gone through the pandemic, we know that there's a capital outlay cost for the technology, and then there's an immediate cost for the staffing that's required to manage the technology once it goes into the ground. And we wouldn't really be in a position to your example, Karen, install meters in Biltmore Village and then not have the staff available to manage that new enhancement. So one of the reasons that you may not have seen some of those expansions on certain timelines that may have been discussed previously is it really can be very complex for us to plan through what does that staffing model need to look like, what does the technology model need to look like, because there's a basic level of service that we need to be able to provide on day one once we do something new. And because we have seen pretty significant revenue decreases, and we also have to make sure that we're having enough cash on hand to deal with not only operating expenses, but capital maintenance projects, that becomes a challenging question to answer sometimes.
I think there's a couple hands that are still up, but I did see, I think Karen's hand just went up. Megan and Ruth, yours are still up. Are those old or new? Okay. Karen?
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like there also may be some system problems because, you know, I understand you guys are this enterprise fund, yet money goes out, right, from parking that doesn't necessarily go back into parking, or is that not true? But the other thing is, that, you know, there's a difference between an investment and an expense, and it seems like the city, and it may not be you, I'm not putting this on you, Garrett. I think you've got enough on your plate, but it does seem like there should be not quite this silo thing going on, and folks should be looking at the fact that over time you make the investment in a whole lot of ways. I mean, that's how you sold it to the CBD. So it just does feel like downtown just gets shaken over and over like a piggy bank to get the last bit out. And and I know that last year revenues were down. There was a pandemic. You guys opened up for free. There's going to be, everybody has, almost everybody, unless you're a grocery store or medical clinic or something. We've all had seen our numbers go down. Most of us, especially when you're talking to small businesses, people have furloughed, laid off staff, taken massive pay cuts, borrowed money they don't know that they can afford to pay back. So I just would like the city to also look bigger picture and outside of the CBD as well. And how are we going to, help other parts of the community contribute to the things that we need? And it sounds like you have constraints that you can't, that are forcing you to not look outside of the CBD, but that seems like something that perhaps needs to be taken to Deborah, needs to be taken to council, needs to be reconfigured so that you can make investments that are going to pay off in the long term.
I would say in response to that, you're right. First of all, so everyone knows there are some parking funds that support transit. There's a few other things that are supported at a much lower level. But I think that is something that we want to clarify going forward. And for us, it goes back to the rate. We know that we do want to go into other areas outside of downtown. We know that there's a certain level of funding we need to put into the infrastructure we have downtown to keep it up and to keep it being a place that people do come and want to engage with us. And so for us, that revenue piece or that rate change piece, that's really the first part. And so that's why we're proposing what we're proposing, so that it gives us a framework to say we're not going backwards, we're not positioning ourselves in a way that will lose revenue, because we aren't going to be able, to your point, to look at those expansions if we're positioning ourselves where we're not able to take care of the infrastructure we have, plus look at something new down the road.
Right. But if you kill the businesses downtown, there's going to be no reason for folks to come park there. It's just a dance. And I'm, and again, it's that silo question, because, you guys are trying to operate all this parking, but the city benefits in all kinds of ways by having all these vibrant businesses and these customers and these people coming in. And I guess maybe this, this isn't a question for this group, but it does seem like the benefits that the city gets from the sort of bigger circles after people park, there are all kinds of ways that the city makes money once people leave their cars in the lot, and it feels like you guys are bearing all the cost and not getting credit for some of the additional benefit. But thank you. You were very patient, Garrett.
You're very welcome.
And Garrett and Ken, will you be presenting to the council committee a map and documents and more information, just so this group is aware, and others from the public that might be interested? Like, is that present? Will the public be able to find more information about this in advance of that Finance and Human Resources Committee meeting? Or what's the best way for people to continue to keep up with the process?
I'll try to answer that, Dana. We don't have, Karen's idea is a good one, but we don't have any mapping done at this time. And the information that we have furnished, we have been working closely with the budget team as far as the staff report, because that it's really them that's presenting it. We'll be there to answer any questions. but the staff report itself is what is available as far as I know. And I assume that it goes out in advance, just like city council notifications do.
Thank you. And I'll make sure you all, as well as the Downtown Commission, receives those materials. And before we move on, just to talk a little bit more broadly about this group, does anyone else have questions or comments to share? Okay. I think this was a really important and good discussion, and you all, transportation staff is here to hear you and listen, and Councilwoman Turner is here as the Downtown Commission's council liaison. So appreciate you all getting together, and I know that Councilwoman Turner.
I was just going to say, feel free to reach out to me individually as well. I know a lot of the information is out there. I'm actually going to probably try and do a little rough mapping kind of assessment so I can understand it before it comes to council. So if anybody wants to talk about that, just reach out. You all have my number.
And I'll just add, Brian Moffitt, chair of the Downtown Commission, and Councilwoman Turner did want this group to get together to be able to provide this input. So thank you again. This group was set up as a subcommittee of the Downtown Commission. Committees of boards and commissions haven't been meeting regularly. Neither have council committees even really been streamlining some of the critical business and holding public meetings. We provided some clarification to the full Downtown Commission, as well as this committee, that it is possible for you all to work together in some format informally, and we want to continue to make sure that that you're aware of that. And we've been referring to that type of structure as a working group. And I think in plain language, that means if there's not a quorum of the Downtown Commission, which is 6 people, you all as community members, as volunteers, are able to consider and work on items that may be brought to the commission, that the commission may discuss and deliberate on. You all are, there's a lot of different opportunities that the Downtown Commission works in the community and with the private sector, and as volunteers and as citizens, you all do have some ability to think about that on your own and consider, what should or could come to the Downtown Commission for public discussion and deliberation. So I just want to offer that. And this group, staff can't commit at this moment to convening this group as a formal subcommittee monthly. We leave it up to you all if you want to meet in an informal way and work with one another and talk about some of the issues or needs when it comes to downtown parking and transportation. And I hope that helps clarify things a little bit. And there isn't a chair or a lead of this group now. And so that's also just something I want to put out there for you all to consider. Councilwoman Turner.
Ken, can you speak to the process? Doesn't this come to Finance Committee next week and then to Council? Can you tell me those dates?
Yes, it's scheduled to go to Finance Committee on April 20th, and then I believe it goes to Council on May 11th.
So 5 days till it comes to the Finance Committee. Also, if you do want to reach out and discuss, you have about 3 days because I'll need to prepare. Thanks, everybody.
Does anyone have thoughts or suggestions around how this group might work together moving forward? Stephen Lee?
I'd like to, in a future meeting, have maybe an update and or discussion about the electric shuttle or the shuttle downtown that I know has always been a major funding issue. But I do think that if we're addressing parking and transportation issues downtown, part of the immediate and then long-term resolution to that is people being able to park in outlying lots and being able to have dependable shuttle service through downtown, especially for weekend or out-of-town visitors, but even more so for residents that live downtown, not having to use their car to go from one end of downtown to the other. So that might be an interesting future topic if there's any information to share. Thanks.
I would just offer that what that might look like in an informal working group format is that folks from this group might talk with other possible private sector community partners to see if, where other folks in the community are at, and then be able to bring something for discussion to the full downtown commission. Not to say that this group can't convene. We're convening now to talk about a very important item, but just want to offer that as well, or for some context. Other thoughts on this group or items of interest moving forward?
Are you guys going to try and pick a chair? Seems like you need a chair. I'm sorry I had to leave. I took this other job. But you do need a chair, and I chaired it for 3 years, so I'm going to pick one of you if you don't. I can't. I'm kidding. But does anybody want a chair? I think you're going to need a chair, because what I'm sensing here with these, I saw Karen raise the hand. I'm going to take that literally. She wants the chair. I think what I'm seeing here is with these working groups is that they're really convening on an as-needed basis. They're very informal, but they can be great discussion opportunities. So if we don't have a chair, I'm a little concerned it will fall by the wayside, especially things like Stephen Lee is bringing up, because I will point out, as the American Rescue Plan, as we learn more, there are transit funds coming, there are rescue dollars that are going to help transit, there are other things that, I don't know if the electric shuttle that you mentioned, Stephen Lee, or the shuttle is still in play. It very much was part of the TMIP process, which was the Tourism Management Investment Planning, and it could resurface. So I think you all should keep talking is my point. So I would hate for this meeting to leave without somebody that's going to kind of hold those reins. Does anybody want to do it? Karen, is that why you were raising your hand?
Well, I don't mind trying to coordinate it for a while. I'm hoping desperately to get to spend more time not in Asheville. So that would be, an issue. But I'm happy to try to at least gather everybody's information and find out what people's interests are. Dana, I don't know if I have an updated list. The one on the Google Drive doesn't have, I don't think has everybody's contact information. But, I don't mind being at least the first person up to try to figure out where we go from here. Cause I know, Sage is out and Dana's got tons on her plate. So if somebody could get me a list, I can at least reach out to folks and try to figure out how to move forward.
I can connect you all in one big email if that helps.
That would be great.
Okay. I'm going to connect everybody that's on here. I'm going to do it while we're on the phone because I don't want to miss anybody, or on the call. I'm going to do it right now. We got Karen, Megan. I can't see you all. This tiny screen thing is really hard. But Megan, I see Stephen Lee, Ruth, Karen, I've got 6 others.
Jane Anderson couldn't make it today because she has a job fair.
Okay.
Also, the Downtown Commission at their May meeting is going to look at their amended rules of procedure, which I sent out, which does formally recognize the role of a working group versus a subcommittee. So just for those of you who are part of this group, but not part of the full Downtown Commission, we can keep you guys informed on how that particular discussion goes, because it relates to the work of this group and the structure of this group.
Okay. I think I have all of you. Who did you say wasn't here today? Jane Anderson. Right?
Does
Did
anyone?
Kappas,
Say that again, Ruth.
Pat Kappas.
Yeah, Pat. We've got Karen, Megan, Stephen Lee, Pat, Ruth, and Jane. And there is I think I must have an old meeting minutes. Whoever does end up chairing this, I was also taking the minutes. I don't know if that matters, but I'll connect you guys all via email and we can go from there.
There's a public folder, and I took some notes last time and I took some notes this time. So I'll make sure that those are in that public folder.
And I will send a link in my email to that folder as well. right now. Okay.
Anything else from anybody?
I did want to share one thing. We're starting to make plans for next fiscal year's focus, and one thing that's on the docket is to do an audit of the downtown pedestrian signage. We've been getting requests, which probably many of you have been involved in or heard about, for expanding, signage north of 240 and certainly down to South Slope, and so that's definitely going to be on the table for the upcoming fiscal year. Look at updating pedestrian signage and expansion, which will help with dispersal. And of course, would love everybody here involved in that throughout that process.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and I'm just noticing as I go to share this public parking and transportation subcommittee folder, I'm actually the owner. So I may need to just, Dana, when I send it to you, you may need to pull it into a staff ownership or something and copy and paste or start a new folder. I'm not sure. But I personally, Sage Turner, own this whole folder. So that's probably not great.
Okay, I can transfer that. Anything else before we close? All right, thanks everybody for getting together today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate your help and input. We really do.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Take care.